da do 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 Nightmare Alley do da do da do a Nightmare Alley do da do da do a Nightmare Alley do da do a Nightmare Alley do da do. Hey, what's going on? We are here. We're just gonna launch right into it. We're here to talk about Nightmare Alley. The new film from Guillermo del Toro, GDT. Probably said his first name wrong. That's what I do. Mispronounce names. That's how I roll. I really, really wanted to do a whole show dedicated to this film. I know a lot of people have not seen it. I know this is niche beyond niche to do, niche beyond niche to do this, to dedicate a stream to this film, but it's worth it in my heart. I don't care about catching trends or trying to chase trends or anything. I like to talk about things that I'm passionate about. This is a film that I feel very passionate about. And I'm very lucky and fortunate in that I was not the only one who ventured out to the theater to go and see Nightmare Alley. A fellow cinephile by the name of Nathan Ludwig, who you will know as the festival director, mastermind behind the Genreblast Film Festival. He's also a producer, the Genreblast's first feature-length film and anthology about vacation horror, worst case scenario. Hope I said that right. As well as the Real 96 podcast, of which I've been a guest on many times. We have great fun talking about movies from the year 1996. I'll tell you something. I find talking about an obscure movie from 1996 far more rewarding than talking about the new Spider-Man. Don't get me wrong. I love to wax poetic about the new Spider-Man, but there is nothing on earth like doing a deep dive on Jingle All the Way or Big Bully or Dunstan Checks In and somehow getting to a point where you're remaking Dunstan Checks In as Murders at the Rue Morgue. I mean, it's just, that's podcasting. That's the type of podcasting that I live for. So let me bring Nathan on. We'll bring him out of the digital green room. Hello.
What is going on, man? This is so good to be back again.
Oh, yeah. We love having you on the channel, on the show. There's no name for this show. It's just the Frumess channel. That's what it is. So we're just here talking about him. The Jeff Show. It used to be the Jeff Show. And I mean, it still is the Jeff Show, but I just stopped I was like, I don't have to call it the Jeff Show. Everybody knows it's the Jeff Show and that's it.
Absolutely.
You know, and we're here every day. We'll be here through the rest of the year, folks, and probably into the new year. And then into February, then into March, April, May, June, July, 30 days has September, April, June, and November. Yeah. So, no, we're talking about Nightmare Alley today. And I guess let's do a very quick little bit of history. Did not come prepared. I'm shooting from the hip. You don't have notes, do you?
I have brain notes.
Yeah, I have brain notes too.
I saw it last night, so it's still fresh in my head.
Perfect. So Nightmare Alley is based on a novel, and I think it was written in the 1920s, something like that. I'm sure a quick Wikipedia check would confirm that. I don't know off the top of my head, but it was written in the earliest 20th century, I believe. And in 1947, it was adapted into a film noir movie, or it's considered to be one of the great film noirs, starring Tyrone Power.
Yep.
And you might be familiar with that name. And it was a personal favorite film of Johnny Ramone, guitarist and founding member and leader of the Ramones. He loved Nightmare Alley. Big fan of that film, as well as Freaks and all those others. And I had heard forever about this film. And about 2 years ago, I finally sat down. I had it queued up for a long time and finally sat down and watched it and absolutely loved it. I love being transponded into the world. Thank you. Transported into the world of black and white film noir. I personally made my sole feature length debut is a film. I would qualify it as a film noir or a gothic noir, maybe. And I love that. I love everything about it. I love that world. I love that sort of style. I love watching those films, not even for the plots, just to sit in the shadows. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And then GDT, he remade this film with the cast and whatnot, the cast that he has, and Magnum cast, Willem Dafoe, Bradley Cooper, yada yada yada. He remade the film, but it's not. No, sorry, he didn't remake the film. He adapted the film from the novel. Big difference. It's not a remake of 1947's Nightmare Alley. So I've talked enough. Nate, why don't you pick up the slack there? What is your relationship with Nightmare Alley?
So I saw the original Nightmare Alley from 47 long time ago. It's been a while. I did not revisit it. Just because I didn't have the time. So I feel like if we try to cover both movies in the book on this show, we'll be here for hours.
No, we can't do it. Can't do it.
But I have not read the book, saw the original movie a long time ago, and I watched Nightmare Alley, the new one, last night. I always like to say, you go to a late show and you get the theater to yourself, but it kind of sucks because you want that communal experience for certain films. And
for this film, sure, certainly.
This, if I'm going to see, I don't know, Hitman or whatever, just some lame genre film, then yeah, I don't care if I have the theater to myself because I don't have to hear anybody talking. But this movie, you kind of want an audience to go on this journey because this is like you said, it's a transporting film. It's a gorgeous looking film, and the performances suck you in right from the get go. I love this film. And I'm really disappointed that, this is GDT. Like,
oh yeah,
he doesn't open a film like Tarantino, but still, this is GDT. He can still pull in numbers, and this movie is not making any money whatsoever. And it's really sad. It made me actually sad that people aren't going to see this movie. Everything got sucked into the vortex that is Spider-Man No Way Home, even The Matrix. And I think people should have steered clear of Spider-Man, but I think people are dumping releases and trying to get them out in the year so they can make way for their calendar year for next year. But this is one of the casualties, along with The Last Duel, which I really enjoyed as well, that got shafted at the box office too. Didn't see House of Gucci, but I did see Last Duel, and I love that movie too.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. You imagine that this film would have come out. This is the perfect January, February release.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, things slow down, and then you use, this is, if you put GDT in the January, February, maybe even March slot, like the first quarter slot, he's going to dominate. He's going to dominate. People, as you said, I think Tarantino was a good comparison there. People go to a GDT movie because it's GDT. Sure, they might go. They're not going to this film because it's Bradley Cooper. They're going because it's GDT doing an adaptation Nightmare Alley. And it would be crazy to go through. We can't compare and contrast. It would be too much to pour over. But the one thing I will say before we launch into talking about specifics, the one thing I would say that's very important in making comparisons and weighing everything out is we need to take appraisal or account of the fact that he is adapting from the book and that he's not remaking the film, and that because of that, he is using way more. He's drawing way more from the source material. There's so much more happens in this film in the third act, the second and third act, than it does in the original film, which it kind of feels almost stunted quite a bit. I don't know if it's the time period that causes that to happen, or if that's, I don't know what that's about, but I feel like there's a whole swath of plot that is just missing from the end of this film. Yes, Walter White, this is a live stream. We're talking about Nightmare Alley. Warning, spoilers.
Yes, very spoiler heavy. If you don't want to know spoilers for Nightmare Alley, we're going to go into all of them.
That's right. So welcome to Walter White out of New Zealand. Beware. So first of all, I think it was a brilliant sort of move on GDT's part to make this a period piece, because I wasn't sure if it was going to be a period piece or not.
I am so glad they made a period piece out of this. I'm glad they didn't try to modernize it like a lot of Hollywood films do.
Right.
Where how are you going to do that? How would you do the traveling circus in modern times? That would be so obnoxious. I can't even I don't even know where to begin. The fact that they set this in like 1939, I believe the time period goes from like 1939 to 1941, basically.
Right. They kind of shove it in your face, like, oh, World War II is happening. Like they sort of just rub that right in your nose because they want you to know what the time period is without saying it.
Del Toro is really into World War II. I mean, you've got Devil's Backbone, I think, took place during World War II.
Pan's Labyrinth,
obviously, during the oppression of Franco in Spain during World War II. And I heard that his next movie is Pinocchio, and it's going to take place during Mussolini's Italy. So,
oh my God,
yeah. I don't know if he's producing or directing, but that sounds awesome.
He is such a great filmmaker. Before the end of so we're going to cap off this stream when we're done with top 5 things we want to see GDT to, whether it's a remake or something that he would be really good at adapting. So keep that in the back of your mind, okay, when we get to the end. It doesn't make, speaking of the Matrix 4, one of the things that I talked about with Bob and my friend Jeremy is that the Matrix applies differently than it did in 99, right? Like in 99, the rules were easier to define because people weren't so enmeshed. The technology has gotten to a point where it sort of becomes much harder to do a Matrix film in a way that makes sense because our lives are very sort of meta to begin with.
Yeah.
And by that same coin, as you said, to try and tell this film in the 21st century, it would not work. You have to honor the time period from which the book was written and which the original movie was made in order to properly adapt this film. It's predicated on a lot of stuff. Like, for instance, you can't do a Romeo and Juliet film with cell phones, right? You can't do it.
Nope.
It's impossible. What would happen? Romeo would text Juliet and everything would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
No, there'd be no story. Romeo and Juliet, one of the greatest tragedies ever written, is predicated on the lack of use of cell phones.
Yes. And I just watched the wife and I watched West Side Story on Sunday. We went to the theater. And it's the same thing. That's the Romeo and Juliet story. It was great.
Right.
I thought it was fantastic.
Right.
I thought it was on par with the original, which is a controversial statement apparently. But
I got to see it.
It's just as good as the original. But it's got that Romeo and Juliet thing where at the end, you think this is not a spoiler for a 60-year-old movie, but you think she's dead. She's not really dead. And the guy, gets killed, and it's all based on a miscommunication of the time. And cell phones, you could FaceTime and be like, "Oh, you're not dead, you're alive," So that stuff kind of has to be set in a certain time period. I like writing horror films that take place before cell phones because people say that's lazy writing. It's not lazy writing. It's just that technology solves a lot of problems. So you either have to be out in the middle of nowhere or you have to have no cell phones like take place. That's why you see so many retro slasher films these days, because they don't want to have to deal with the problem of technology of cell phones. So,
or you see, there's always it's always a contrivance that's written into the script. Oh, we're getting no service. They have to say it out loud and let you know that they're not getting any service. It's the same thing as doing a found footage movie and you can't figure out why on earth they would leave the camera recording. Like, there's no scenario where you would continue recording when something really scary is happening. So to bring it back around to the movie at hand, Nightmare Alley, you can't do Nightmare Alley where you have a mentalist, because it's about a mentalist. It's about a mentalist gag, and we'll get into that in a second. You can't have a mentalist scam going on when someone has a cell phone in the audience. It's just not going to work. It just doesn't work. It's never going to work. So you lose. So by that statement, the story is it's a time period tale. You can't tell it in any other time but that time. Right?
Yes, absolutely. So, I love the whole carny world aspect relationship, hucksters.
Yeah.
I grew up on pro wrestling. I'm still a pro wrestling fan, and pro wrestling came out of the carnivals where they would pretend, like, we're going to fight, and it's a fake fight. But the guys that are fighting are actually can fight, but they put on a show for the marks, quote unquote, that's what they would call people, is the marks that would pay to see this stuff. The bearded lady, the beast man, and the geek biting heads off chickens. It's this whole crazy culture built around bilking money out of people, and it's almost kind of like, you seem, oh, these people are wrestling the rubes, but I think most people deep down know that this stuff is ridiculous, but they just want to see a show. So you have that relationship, that back and forth, that symbiotic relationship of the carnies and the audience. There, you have one has to be willing to give over to the other, and vice versa, in order for it to work. Nowadays, pro wrestling, everybody knows pro wrestling is fake. Back in the day, a lot of people thought it was real. People still go to watch it because they want to be entertained, and they're okay with knowing that this is fake. Just like going to watch a movie, you have to suspend your disbelief. You have to give that energy over to the performers in order for it to work, or there's no point in watching it. So it's just like any trick or show in a carny, carnival. It's the same thing. I love that whole aspect, and I was entranced the entire time with that. And I could have watched, it's a 2.5 hour movie already, but I could have watched like a 4-hour cut of this movie.
I easily could have watched 4 hours of this film. I was so glad that it was 2.5 hours. I never wanted it to end, kind of like, I just loved being in that world. And I want to quickly touch on, before we move on, you really sort of, I didn't think about it in this way. And I guess wrestling is the very last form of like vaudevillian entertainment that we have left. It comes from, yes, Walter, you're totally right. Wrestling is the theater, and it comes from, like, when people say wrestling is fake, they really need to reframe it as sort of like a vaudevillian theatrical act of physicality.
It's performance art.
Performance. Yeah. It's performance art. And it is, like, and I guess maybe it gets that stigma because, wrestling is an actual sport. And so people are constantly drawing comparisons to, say, Olympic style wrestling versus, stage, carny, vaudevillian, theatrical wrestling that is literally the last bastion of these dead art forms in reality. Like the traveling show still exists in the form of wrestling. I didn't even think about it like that. That is absolutely a profound observation, Nathan. Truly profound.
Oh, I don't know if it's profound, but it's an observation.
Well, listen, it's profound to me because I never thought about it that way. Let's sort of paint a little bit of this world. So this is taking place at, the height of the Great Depression, or the right before the Great Depression is going to break. And we meet Bradley Cooper. We can't go beat by beat. We'll just sort of gloss over swaths. We meet Bradley Cooper's character, and he, we're instantaneously sucked into the story because he's setting a body on fire. He's putting it in a hole in a house and setting on fire. We have no idea why. And, normally you could roll your eyes at this another contrivance of, oh, we're gonna, now we're gonna jump back in time and tell you what, but we don't get that. Instead, we just see Bradley Cooper is, what's his name again Stan? Right?
It's man, what is his name?
Yeah,
it's Stan. Not Stan. It's not Stan. It's like Stanton. Stanton Carlisle.
Yeah, but they call him Stan, I think.
I think they call him Stan, but his name is Stanton Carlisle.
Right. He's just a drifter, and he finds his way to, a circus, or, a circus situation that has all of the stuff that Nathan was talking about. It has the beard. It has all sorts of attractions. The bearded woman. The strong man is played by Ron Perlman. It's awesome. You have a person of small stature, of course. You wouldn't have a carnival without a person of small stature doing some sort of, various different things. Willem Dafoe sort of is the boss of the carnival, and he also owns a geek attraction. And the geek is very important. As you can see, Nathan's title here, he calls himself Nathan the Geek. Nathan, are you familiar with well, obviously you know what a geek is. What's the best way to describe a geek?
So what's great about this movie is that it explains a lot of carny stuff without giving a lot of exposition, because it shows you and it doesn't tell you. Like Willem Dafoe's role in this movie is so good, and he's just a supporting character, but he plays the character of Clem, who's kind of like in charge of some of the sideshows, including the wild man, the is he man or is he beast kind of gimmick,
Right.
where they keep him in a cage. And I don't want to go into too much spoilers about how they get a geek, but you know, a geek is a slang
Well, you
term.
have to, because we're spoiling
Okay.
it, but you don't have
Okay.
to right this second. You can wait. You can wait on it, but we are going to talk about it for sure.
So geek is a term for a guy basically who bites heads off of chickens. That's the basic.
Right.
You know, I knew that before knowing anything about carny stuff. Like, I mean, Luther
Right.
the Geek is a famous
Luther the
cult,
Geek.
famous cult horror film.
Trauma
But
film.
yes, trauma film. And you know, Willem Dafoe's character is telling Bradley Cooper's character Stanton about how do you get a geek. This is one of the best scenes in the movie. How do you get a geek?
So good. And now correct me if I'm wrong. That scene is not in the original film.
No. This movie's about 15 to 20 minutes longer than the actually no, it's about 50 minutes longer. It's way longer.
Yeah. The originals, the 47 cut, the 47 version is about 107 minutes.
Yeah.
This is 2.5 hours, and that's why I'm saying they put so much more. There's so much more of the book is in this film. I'm pulling up the IMDb so I can like say people's names and not like forget. But yeah, this scene, that's what was so cool about watching this, and what was so cool about what GDT did. Even if you've seen the original Nightmare Alley and you kind of have an idea of where things are going to go, there's so much new stuff that you are, you know, marveled and enthralled and absorbed in what is going on, unsure of what might happen next. And yes, there is a scene at a diner. Before we even get there, let's just talk quickly. Bradley Cooper, Stanton, he ends up joining this circus. And, you know, this is a world where you could be a drifter and you know, wander your way into a situation where you're just looking for work as you're passing through. It's always just passing through. Got some work for me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Willem Dafoe's Clem is like, yeah, I'll pay you $1. I'll pay you $1 for 12 hours of work. It's backbreaking work, and we need this done, and we need it done right now. And $1 was a lot at that time, you know, for it was a good, that you get $1
especially
a day.
During a depression, $1
right.
for you know, yeah, like a day's worth of work. That's worth a couple meals probably, you know.
Right. And then he tops it off, and I love the food that's in this film. There's something so hearty about food at this time, like a good meal is a good meal. Steak and eggs with a side of bread, that kind of thing.
I love steak
and
eggs.
You know, for 10 cents or whatever. And so it's like, you know, he says, why don't you join us to the next town? I'll buy you a hot meal or something. So he goes to the next town, buys him a hot meal. It's kind of weird because they're traveling circus, but then there's like a psychic act, and that's played. Toni Collette is. We all know Toni Collette is a great actress. She is so phenomenal in this film. She plays Xena the Seer, and she lives in like a brick and mortar house, which is kind of weird because I thought they were like a traveling circus, but she seems to never move with the circus in that kind of way.
I think that's a cabin that they rent out. So I'm not 100% sure because I did see a sign that says log cabins or whatever for rent when they.
Maybe I missed that.
When they're pulling out, I think they might have just rented that house because it's in the area. I'm not 100% sure though.
Right.
But before we go any further, I want to say this cast. Can I swear on this one?
Of course. Yeah.
This fucking cast is one of the greatest casts, one of the greatest ensembles I've ever seen in a major film.
It's really
great. You got Bradley Cooper.
Yep.
Cate Blanchett, Toni Collette, David Strathairn, Ron Perlman, Rooney Mara, Richard Jenkins, Holt McCallany from Mindhunter. You've got who am I missing? Willem Dafoe.
You said Richard Jenkins just now.
Yeah, Richard Jenkins, Tim Blake Nelson. This cast goes on and on and on, and it is so good. Mary Steenburgen. I mean, half of Hollywood is in this movie, and I just looked at the numbers. It's made $6 million so far at the box office. for a budget of 60 million. And I'm
You want to
just
know
like,
something? It's not a flop though. You can't. It's a smattering of circumstances, as you just said. Spider-Man, COVID,
it
winter
is.
competition. It was a piss poor decision, and the critics recognize how much of a successful film it is critically. And I have a feeling that
This movie's going to find an audience.
Yes,
this movie's going to find an audience next year. People are going to watch it on streaming or buy it on Blu-ray or whatever, and they're going to be like, why didn't I go see this movie in the theaters? Because it's a gorgeous film. I can't wait to get this in 4K. You know, I mean,
but yeah, so there's an ensemble cast, and he joins the Carnival. Stanton, played by Bradley Cooper, he joins the Carnival, and Willem Dafoe kind of takes it under his wing. And it's like, you know, being in this Carnival, it's the type of situation where, like, you know, you find a bed wherever you can. There's like a straw bed behind a cabinet of curiosities, and Stan witnesses, and this is very important in the film, because what the film does is it takes, I would say, it's sort of, well, no, actually, I was going to say it does it in the 47 film. It doesn't do it in this one. That's done with that scene, the steak and eggs scene with Willem Dafoe in the diner after they drop off the geek. Basically, they introduce a geek. And what the geek does is, the geek is a person, usually an alcoholic, someone who is so dependent on booze that they will do anything for a bottle of booze. And that includes biting the heads off chickens, because that's what a geek does. A geek bites the heads off of chickens for people's amusement. Mm-hmm. We now think of a geek culture, geek somehow transformed. It went from being a pejorative for, you know, or just an idiom for, or a label for, a carny freak, to, you know, calling someone who's an outcast or into.
Yeah, that's the word right there. It goes from being one outcast to the other, you know.
Right.
Whether you're biting heads off of chickens or whether you're into Dungeons and Dragons, you're a geek. You know, you're right. You don't belong. You're not one of us. You know, right. Like in Freaks, when they're like, one of us. We accept you, one of us.
Yeah. And you know, oh God, yeah, man. Oh God, you know what I want to see? Oh my God, please let GDT do a remake of Freaks. That's my first one. That's my first of like 5 films. Oh, could you imagine Freaks and Nightmare Alley as like a double feature?
Oh my God. GDT? Or Peter Jackson doing a remake of Freaks. I want to see Peter Jackson do another movie. I mean, come on.
I want to see Peter Jackson do Freaks. That's the perfect dip back into horror.
Yes.
That's it.
That's what he's talking about, right? Is doing a horror film.
Yes, and he would do Freaks so like nobody.
Oh my God, it would be terrifying.
It would be so good. It would be so good. In any case, so we get introduced to the geek, and the geek is an alcoholic in such despair and ruin that there is no, the alcoholic of the hopeless variety, and someone who will probably die of their alcoholism, and their mind isn't there. You know, someone who probably has some form of wet brain at this point and just subsists on 2 bottles a day or a bottle a day of booze and lives in a cage. Willem Dafoe, normally these acts are sort of like, you know, there's like the way that they're treated during the act, and then they're, you know, back behind the scenes, everything's cool. But in the case of the geek, he is caged up at night. He is treated like the beast that they pretend he is. He really is that beast to them. And it gets to a point even where, we find out that it's illegal. Obviously, as it should be, because essentially what it is, it's enslavement. They are enslaving this person somewhat against their will.
They're basically shanghaiing them, basically, to coin a term. Yeah. You know, they're just grabbing them and they're doping them up. They're alkying them up, and, you know, they're turning them into a hobo geek, basically. One little push, and then, like, you know, that scene where Willem Dafoe is eating steak and eggs with Bradley Cooper.
Let's just talk about that scene. Just go.
And he's like, you know how to get a geek, you know, and Willem Dafoe is so good at delivering monologues. Like, any movie he's ever been in, I don't think he's ever had a weak performance, but this is one of his best scenes ever as an actor.
Well, wait. One real quick. I'm going to interject just real quick, because this scene takes place after the fact that the geek that they have, he's no good anymore.
No,
they drop him off. He's done.
Well, the geek, The original geeky. Let's set it up a little bit more because
Right.
Stanton, he actually sneaks into the geek show. It's a quarter to stay and
Right.
watch the geek bite a head off a chicken. Bradley Cooper skips the entrance to the extra fee and is just watching him bite the head off a chicken. He thinks that nobody has watched him do this. And when he goes to pick up his pay for his day's work, when he's helping tear down the carnival,
Right.
instead of $1, they give him 75 cents because Willem Dafoe's like, I saw you peeping on the geek show. That's a quarter. So you only get 75 cents. So like carnies are slick, sharp-eyed people that they will fuck you over a quarter and they don't give a shit. So that was a fun little scene. I like that little moment because it rewards you for paying attention. And Guillermo del Toro knows that the audience isn't stupid like some other filmmakers do. And they'll figure shit out on their own. And that's what I like about him. He does not hold your hand with anything. There's a difference between
nothing in this.
Stupid exposition and artful exposition. And Del Toro knows how to do artful exposition, like this scene with the geek. So setting that up, the geek escapes while they're tearing down the circus out in the rain. And he gets into the fun house. Stanton finds him and he's trying to be nice to him. He's like, hey dude, I'm not going to
treat him like a person.
And he gets rewarded by getting hit on the head with a rock by the geek. So because the geek is trying to escape.
Yeah, the geek is like scarred,
Maybe he had a moment of clarity. He's trying to get the fuck out of there. So he's trying to escape. Who's this guy? He doesn't care. So they finally get him and and Stanton gets him and beats him up really good. And they're like, no, you're going to kill our geek. What are you doing? Because everything's an investment.
He brains him good. Yep.
He punches him really good. And so then he's like, all right, I'll take you out for a meal or whatever. And he's telling him, actually, though, there's another scene where like the geek is drank too much or something, or he's got an infection.
There's a bunch of stuff happens. Yeah, he gets the wound slowly gets infected.
Yes.
Stanton, we'll just fill in the narrative super quick. Stanton joins the show and befriends the Xena the Seer and her husband, who is also a drunk, but of a different variety.
Yeah.
That's David
Strathairn.
Strathairn. I can't say that. Yeah, he's in a lot of movies.
Oh my
God. River Wild,
LA Confidential.
Yeah,
Marshall.
Tons of stuff.
Yeah.
He plays a drunk himself who always needs a bottle of the sugar mash at night. There's two different types of alcohol that Clem has. He has the stuff that'll kill you, which this scene was in the original film.
Yeah.
He has the stuff that'll kill you, and he's got the stuff that'll make you drunk. And he always says, you better pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't pay for it, I'll know and I'll get you. So you put a nickel in the tin can and you take out your bottle of booze and don't use the rubbing alcohol variety. And of course, Stan does take that rubbing alcohol variety and gives it to Pete, killing him.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that goes on there. So let's leave that alone for a second and go back to
there's a lot to talk about there.
We'll come back to that because that's about Stan's character. But basically, Stan is now he's employed and gets to know everybody and yada yada yada. And then Clem says, "Hey, come help me with the geek. We got to get rid of him. The geek is cashed, basically."
Yeah.
So they drop him off at a missionary, like a Jesus Saves missionary type situation.
They ding dong ditch, yeah.
And then they ding dong ditch, and they just so callously like, we used you up. And you know what it kind of reminded me of? It like Clem then sits down and has this steak and eggs conversation with Stanton. He says, "You know how you make a geek?" And I'll let Nathan explain this. But what's interesting is the one thing I will say is that there's almost like a sort of pimp mentality.
Absolutely.
There's like this pimp mentality to Clem. Like this is what pimps do with the women that they sort of possess. I guess is the best way would be possess and enslave and whatever the situation might be. Mm-hmm. It's subjective. It's wide and subjective. I don't want to use specific terms because there's a bunch of different things. But in the toxic variety, the really, really, really bad situation. I don't know if there's not a bad situation when it comes to pimps, but my point being with all of this is just simply that he sounded like a pimp, the way a pimp sort of does mental gymnastics over a woman he has in his employ and possession and hostage, and uses her up until she's no good to him anymore in that kind of way.
Pretty much. This
yeah.
movie is all about using people up until they're no good to you anymore, or they
Right.
can't take it anymore. That's
Right.
pretty much what this movie is about, among other things.
Mhm.
So they're sitting down for dinner, and after they've dropped off this geek, we don't even know if he's dead or alive. He's probably going to die. And
Right.
they're having this conversation. Clem couldn't give a shit. He's like, "Hey, you want to know how you get a geek? You want to know how you
So
get a new
matter of
geek?"
fact, so casual about it.
And Stanton is all in on everything. He is absorbing all of this information on how to do mentalism, how to, everything about the carny life. He's just
Right.
sponging it up. He hasn't talked much yet in the movie. When we first meet him, he doesn't say a word. When he gets hired
Right.
to be in the circus and everything, you're like, oh, is he going to be mute for a while? Or he's listening, which is very interesting to see as a character. He is observing.
Yeah.
So he's not a guy who's going to, which is funny because as the movie goes on, he can't shut the fuck up. He keeps talking and keeps talking
More
and keeps
and more.
talking. When it gets by the end of the movie, that's all he does is talk. And that's why nobody wants to be around him. Great character arc in this movie. It's just fucking fantastic. So he's talking about how to get a geek, and it's all psychological. It's like, you got to find somebody who's at their wit's end. You got to find somebody who's on the sauce, who is drinking heavily. You got to find someone who's willing to do something for money, and you just give them the little push. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. You just give them a little push over the edge, and then you've got your geek. And you just keep them addicted to the rot gut whiskey or whatever. You keep them chained up.
Hold on. That's a great term. Hold on. I know we're trying to get through this whole thing. There's a lot to talk about, but we have to stop for what rot gut whiskey means. And I want to inject one other detail. He says you put a drop of opium.
Yes, I forgot about that.
The bottle, right? I just want to make sure we touch on that.
He says you wait until the right moment when they're at their breaking point, and then you drop the opium in there, and that sends them over the edge, and they're done, and they want that hit over and over again,
right?
And that's what keeps them basically enslaved as a geek.
Not only enslaved, but that they have no problem, they have no qualm with biting a head off a chicken. Now you got to think 25 cents. If $1 is a day's work, 25 cents is a lot of money to watch a geek bite the head off a chicken. You got all these people come in. The geek is a cash cow for Clem. And he's not paying. What is he paying the geek in? A bottle of booze. That's it.
A place to sleep and a bottle of booze, and that's it.
A cage to sleep.
A cage to sleep. That's true. And another thing, because we're going spoiler heavy. If you don't know anything about this movie or book or whatever, and you're watching this movie and you've seen 5 movies, you probably have an idea where this movie is headed as far as Stanton's character. It's the doom and the portent in this movie is so thick. It's like mayonnaise. Like it's all over the place. It's dread. It's like a sword of Damocles hanging over. And you know where he's going to end up at the end of this movie. You absolutely know. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes knowing where somebody's going to end up adds to the enjoyment of the film or to whatever emotion you want to.
We don't feel bad when we watch him commit heinous deeds. We don't feel bad about him getting away with thing after thing because we know where he is headed. And I mean, you can ultimately sum this film up. It is absolutely a Greek tragedy. It is Oedipus Rex. A little bit, not quite, not in terms of not with the not exactly with the motherfucking or anything, but
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. He's a self-fulfing prophecy.
He is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's just basically the movie really chalks itself up to, and I really want to, we're doing a lot of foreplay here, but the movie essentially is a joke. And what I mean by that is there is a setup and there is a punchline.
Yes.
And it might be, I don't feel like I'm being what's it called?
Misled.
I don't feel like I'm being misled, or I don't feel like I'm being over exaggerating. That's what I mean. I don't feel like I'm over exaggerating when I say that this might be one of the greatest punchlines. This is cinema. It's so good.
The last shot and last line of this movie is on par with There Will Be Blood. As far as I'm finished and I was born for this. Are born of the same cloth. fantastic.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean?
It's just all right. Let's just do it. Let's rip off the Band-Aid. No. Keep going.
We'll go
Let's
a little
keep going.
further.
Yeah.
And also,
yeah.
I wanted to say this movie has a lot in common with Uncut Gems too. And so you're following you're following a character that
Very much so.
something bad is going to happen to this guy. Everybody's warning him.
Right.
Don't do the spook show. Don't do the spook show. Don't do it. And what they're referring to when they say that is that he learns
a spook show?
He learns all the tricks of the older mentalist played by David Strathairn after he dies, and it's implied that he murdered him basically to get his secrets. It's not actually. It's not
implied. It happens in the original film. He does murder him.
In this movie, it makes it a little more a little bit more ambiguous, even though you know that he definitely killed him.
No, it's, you know what it is? It's that it's more, they make it more like he was A, conflicted, and B,
or he accidentally gave him the wrong whiskey.
Right. Or subconsciously, like he needed him out of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And he almost, like, you know what it was? It's almost like in an unguarded moment, he had a mental blank and he did the thing that his heart most desired because he genuinely loved. It
wasn't like I'm going to kill this guy. It was more like, well, he wants the whiskey, so I'll just give it to him. And then he's like, oh, I didn't kill him, even though subconsciously he knows that he did. Right. You know,
he totally.
He's marking himself basically. He's being a carny for himself. You know what I mean? Like he's fooling himself. And I think who's the character that basically said was it Cate Blanchett basically said that you're your own worst enemy, basically. You're not smarter than anyone else. You're basically constantly fucking yourself over, basically. So,
oh my God, that we didn't even get to that part. It's so good, that whole thing. So wait, hold on, real quick though. A little bit more on the mentality stuff. So Pete, who is his mentor, this mentalist, he develops this system, and basically we're talking about like what they do is they have this sort of like seer routine where, you know, you hold an envelope to your head and you sort of you're telepathic and you can predict. You're predicting what somebody's situation, and there's all these different tells. And this is also it aligns with the carny life of how to read someone, how to read your mark. It's because it's all about, as Nathan says, it's all about the mark, reading the mark, and then extracting money from the mark. And there is a code of pride in the carny way. Like the carnies are, it's like we're us and everybody else is different from us. We are a special breed and you're not on our level. It's like there's all that going on in there too. And basically Pete teaches this style of mentalism that is brilliant, and it involves all these complicated hand gestures where, you know, if you do this, it means large. If you do this, it means small. If you do this, it means, like, there's all these different things that are tells that communicate to the person. It's you are the mentalist, and then you have your like assistant person, and you go back and forth, yada yada yada, and that's how. And it's just really ingenious. And Stanton is a very quick learner, and he picks it up. And Pete is happy to teach him because for a very long time he's just become sort of a bumbling drunk. He's drinking behind the back of his wife, played by Xena, aka Toni Collette, who's not very faithful to Pete as the moment she lays eyes on Stan.
As soon as she sees Stan, you're like, she wants to fuck him. Like, yeah,
she just starts giving him a tug. He gets a tuggy right in the she gives him a tuggy right in the
they're literally waiting for him to leave so they can fuck. Like,
yeah, but it's not, you know, what's interesting too is even though they fuck, she's still more like a mother figure than, say, a lover figure, and he's more like a father. So he finds the surrogate family. So
absolutely,
there's the Oedipus. There's a little bit of the Oedipus. Oh, he kills his father. He kills his father and he fucks his mother.
Yeah,
we got it.
You were right.
You
were right.
Had it on the money. We just didn't see that.
There's so much going on in this movie when you peel it back.
There's way more Oedipal action going on than we anticipated. So not only is it a self-fulfilling prophecy, but there is he adopts this woman as his mother, but he fucks her and he kills the man that he sort of looks at as a father way more than his actual father. And then he falls in love with the electric girl, right?
Yes. He's one of these guys that kind of just blows into town and falls in love with every girl he sees and falls out of love with them just as fast. And I've met plenty
Yeah.
of these guys. You know what I mean? They're sweethearts, for a week or
Mhm.
whatever, and then they're done with you after they've used you for whatever they need, and then you don't hear from them again. So
Right.
I don't know if that's a narcissist or a sociopath or what it is, but
Narcissistic and narcissistic sociopathic tendencies. And you know what they say, what I learned far too late in life, I would say, you know what the best way to deal with a narcissist is?
I'm listening.
You don't.
You just cut them out. Yeah.
I learned that, like I've dealt with narcissists in my life and I've dealt with them in business scenarios. And I learned years later, I was reading a thing about how to deal with narcissists. And I just suddenly, the answer became so clear. It said, if you have the option to not deal with a narcissist, then don't deal with them because they're unreasonable people.
You can't confront a narcissist because they're the victim every single time.
Yeah.
They will turn it around and make you feel like you're victimizing them.
They are unreasonable people. They only become reasonable when they stand to have something to gain. And Stan is always looking to gain in some way, shape, or form. So he kills Pete. He takes the knowledge and he runs away with the girl that he falls in love with.
This is after he's killed his father, which you already know. Like, I mean, he's carrying a body in the beginning of the movie. So he's clearly killed somebody. Regardless of the context, we find out later that, yes, he did kill his father. He didn't just die and then he set him on fire. He killed his father
twice.
He killed his father twice. So he has an issue with father figures. So he's like, I don't know, Zeus, trying to stave off Kronos eating him or something. I don't know. But there was a nice moment I liked after he has died, after David Strathairn's character, the mentalist, has died.
Yeah.
They're packing up and they're leaving. I haven't even got to the cop scene yet. I'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to that in a minute.
Oh, yeah. Very important.
But when they're leaving and everybody's leaving and they're packing up and he's going away with Rooney Mara's character, who he has romanced through his charms. I mean, let's be honest. Bradley Cooper is a handsome man. He doesn't have to try that hard, but he's also very charming in this film too. So of course, every woman in the 30s is going to want to sleep with him. So I mean, that's just. I mean, he's got everything going. He's got guile. He's got wit. He's got charm. He's got good looks. So it's not hard for him to do that. He's not exactly Ron Perlman. Let's just say, you know what I mean? Like, I love Ron Perlman, but
we love Ron Perlman.
Face a mother could love. Only a mother could love.
He's got what they call a mug. That's the best. He's got a mug.
I love him, but he's got a dog face. I mean, he's got like a pit bull like kind of face.
You know what it is? It's not. No, his face has character. He
does have
absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the best way to sort of describe it. And that means that he's not good looking in any means of the traditional sense.
He's got that rugged quality. I'm sure there's some women out there that love Ron Perlman, so I'm not saying that.
Yeah, there's definitely got to be a Ron Perlman type out, or people who have are attracted to the Ron Perlman type. But
you're like a Michael Shannon type too. He's not necessarily
great. I put him in the same category.
But women find him sexy too. So
right. So you have so basically he's just like, he becomes the cat's meow of this situation. He kills Pete. He takes the secrets. He runs off with the girl. And Ron Perlman, he plays the strong man, and his friend of short stature goes by the name of the Major, played by Mark Pivinelli. Who's that actor? And him and the Major are very overprotective of. I think her name is Molly. She's Molly Rooney Mara as Molly Cahill, and Molly is like, she does the electricity. She's like a electric woman sort of situation. And, like Stan is also innovative too. He always is trying to think of the next big thing. He's like, I know how to make your act better, that kind of thing. And then they run into trouble and things get very, very sticky. Very, very sticky. And you know what else is sticky, Nate? Do you know what else gets sticky?
What gets sticky, Jeff?
Stickers. Stickers stick. Stickers are sticky.
Absolutely. A nice segue.
Yeah. And you want to know something? This channel is powered by riotstickers.com. That's right. You actually saw Riot Stickers in the comments. That's Josh, Sharpie Riot. He has an independent business. And I got to tell you, It is a phenomenal independent business. He prints all sorts of stuff. He does t-shirts, banners, and stickers. And we're doing a special promotion, special partnership, special tie-in promotion with riotstickers.com. This deal is only available through the Frumess channel, and you are not going to find a better deal on the internet. So if you have an artistic project, this would normally cost you $59 on the website, but here it's only going to cost you $29.50 for 50 3-inch by 3-inch vinyl stickers at riotstickers.com. And the way you're going to get it is you're going to use the 50% off code Frumess right here, Frumess. You can see it right below. So use promo code Frumess, and the link is in the description of this video. Riotstickers.com. I've done business with riotstickers.com. I know a lot of people that do business with riotstickers.com. So if you need stickers, that's the place to go. Use your promo code Frumess for that special promotion. Let's play the 60-second video real quick. We'll take a break and we'll get back and learn about what happened with the cops.
Posters and promo cards, there's nothing we can't print for you. From stage backdrops to bass drum heads, we can print on shirts, we can print on hats, we can print on pants. Cheap prices and high quality, quick turnaround times and free shipping. We also offer free artwork support, great customer service, and so much more. We are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb.
Riot Stickers. Oh, hey, yeah, we're back. Sorry. So everything is sort of, peachy keen. They're doing this new electric act, and things are going fine.
He sets up an electric chair for her. She's just holding on to kind of like the Tesla coils,
right?
And channeling electricity. And he's like, I can make the show better. And that's kind of his way to like romance her a little bit, is impress her by saying, oh, let's do the electric chair act and have the little person character throw the switch and make it look like she's being electrocuted. And it's a whole big rigmarole. And like Ron Perlman, or who was it that was like, this is stupid? I think they're both of them. They were like, this is you don't have to do this. The rubes are already going to pay to see her get electrocuted, but he's into the show aspect of it, which takes place, throughout the rest of the movie when he becomes a mentalist and he starts, raking money in hand over fist. He's into the show purpose. Sticker request.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just was showing we're trying not to do too much with comments because we're having a flowing conversation, but I will answer these questions real quick from Runners Dial Zero. Yes, you can get stickers for vandalism purposes. That doesn't mean that they're being used for vandalism purposes, but they allegedly could be used for vandalism purposes if you wanted to stick them over alt-right stickers that are already doing the vandalism. So you could be vandalizing the vandalism for sure. Talk to Josh about it. Josh does not condone vandalism, neither do I, and we're not saying that you would use such stickers for vandalism purposes, but that you would use those said stickers for whatever purposes you personally do. We are not responsible for whatever you do with your personal stickers and whatnot. And Jody, I'm so happy that you are getting ready for the upcoming Devilock pageant. That is awesome. Back to our scheduled programming. We one thing that we need to touch back on is the fact that where is the electricity going, Nate? Like, this is told, we find out at the end. I kind of want to talk about this real quick because I'm so afraid we're going to forget like later on. This was a bit of a reveal.
It was a bit of a reveal. She's actually being electrocuted. Like, this is not a gimmick where it's just like it's being grounded. She's taking the electricity until she can't take it anymore, and then they turn it off. And she's like sore for days afterwards because she's actually being electrocuted. So there is a little bit like, sometimes if it looks real, it's probably real. Like,
right. And that's what, it's implied early on that she's just doing a gag, that it's a gag. The gag is never explained.
No.
And it's revealed later on. So hopefully we remember to get back to that as we're going through the plot. But basically, just want to touch on that. They're doing that. The cops come. Why do the cops come, Nate?
The cops come because people are kind of basically reporting back from the carnival saying that, women are dressed lewdly, like Rooney Mara's wearing, like, nowadays it would be considered tame, but back then she's wearing like a cutoff, and short shorts, basically. So kind of like they're saying, oh, you're under arrest for being, indecent in public, which is ridiculous now. But back then that was like being naked, basically. And just, they were selling alcohol. I believe they were selling alcohol illegally, and they're getting people drunk. I don't know if it was a dry state or not. Prohibition was over by then. But they still had dry states, so I'm not sure. But they were doing all kinds of unsavory things, and they drew the attention of the cops, basically. And I don't know if that
geek was the geek was the big source of contention.
The geek was the tip off, because they found the geek and he basically reported them, or they figured it out or whatever. So the cops show up, and the sheriff he's got the best mustache I've ever seen. He's got like that kind of the side mustache that goes this way. And he's got I don't know if he's got a club foot, but he's got, or a short one foot is shorter than the other. Stanton sees this right away. He sees that he's got a lift in his right foot. So he figures he's probably had the flu or polio or something when he was a kid. So he uses that and goes into this amazing scene where he completely, like, the cops are ready to shut the circus down and arrest everybody. And he notices his foot and goes into a whole thing where he's communicating with the spirit of his dead mother. And he guesses that it's Mary.
Yeah.
He guesses that he's Mary. Her name is Mary because the guy's Catholic. He's got one of those little Catholic, Mary necklaces.
Right.
And he's like, going into this whole thing, just what mentalists do. They go off of guesses and they go off of signs and clues.
Right.
And
that there's like a list. There's like a list of things. Right.
Yes. That he's learned from the guy's notebook. He was looking, and there's also another scene where he's looking in the notebook and the guy wakes up and he's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just curious, like
it's the last time they spoke.
Yeah. It's the last time they spoke before he died. So he's picking up on all this stuff and how to do this. He's a smart guy. He can learn things, which is why he doesn't talk much in the beginning of the movie, because he's absorbing everything like a computer, whatever, from Weird Science. So he finally, this is the moment where all this pays off, is that he launches in this whole spiel, saves the circus from being shut down. The cop is convinced that this guy is talking to his dead mother, or at least channeling the spirit or whatever, and telling him it's okay. You need to be a forgiving, kind soul, basically saying don't shut down the circus and stuff. And so he saves the day. Everybody loves him. He's on a high over that. His head grows 10 sizes. He thinks he's amazing after doing this. And that's kind of the beginning of Stanton's downfall, is that scene, because he's so good at what he does, but they're like, you're not really supposed to do that stuff. You're not supposed to get that personal and that one-on-one with this mentalism, right? Because it's dangerous. And Toni Collette warns him, and David Strathairn warns him.
They say no spook show.
No spook show, which is a term for doing a seance or doing a one-on-one reading. Because
and why is that? Why is that? What's so bad about doing a spook show?
Because you can, as we see later on, a lot of different effects can happen, and they explore all of them, but they'll start asking specific questions and you won't be able to answer them, or they'll be like, what did I say to you before I die? Or, before you die.
The pitfalls are hazardous. There are tons of them. You just don't know what's going to happen. And the other thing too, is that a spook show, as they call it, it basically is attracting bad vibrations. Mm-hmm. You are asking for it. If they follow the tarot and the tarot cards, and it's just no good. And Pete, he says, I stopped doing this because I got I saw what
I got shut eye. I got shut eye.
What does that mean exactly? Yeah,
basically, there's a term in pro wrestling called being a mark for yourself.
Yeah.
And so what that means is that you believe that you are the greatest wrestler in the world, and that it's real, and that you are the champion, because you actually beat these people for real. So you take yourself way too seriously. Basically, you become a mark for yourself. So that's basically, I keyed in on that right away. He basically became a mark for himself. David Strathairn is saying that he's so good at what he did. He believed that he was actually channeling the dead, which is impossible in this movie. In this movie, at least, that's not it's not real.
Of course.
But they're warning him. The dread in this movie is so delicious. It's so thick, and it's just, I loved it. I got off on it because I knew that this was going to get fucking dark in a hurry, and it did. And by the time
we knew from watching the original film, where he's going to end up.
Absolutely.
But the difference is we don't know how it's going to happen in this film because there's so much more going on.
Yes. By the time we meet Richard Jenkins' character, you're like,
oh,
all right.
Oh my God.
We are fucked. Like, this guy's fucked. Like, you need to just walk away. And he does it. He goes further, just like in Uncut Gems. He goes further, and you're like, oh my God, like, what is going to happen right now? Like, seriously.
So to fast forward here, just to let's fast forward a little bit in terms of what's happening. They leave the circus and they go on to do their own mentalist act. He runs away with Molly, and Ron Perlman, Bruno, and the Major. They really don't like they don't like this because they knew Molly's dad and they want to protect her or whatnot. So they kind of like, they keep in touch with her and stuff, even when they go out to LA. I assume it's LA. And it's kind of interesting.
I think it's Buffalo,
New York.
I think it's Buffalo because it's snowing at the end, and they're at the bus station. And they're headed to Cincinnati from Buffalo. I believe it's Buffalo.
I want to say that this shares a universe. Since we always are obsessed with shared universes, I want to say that this is a shared universe with Chinatown.
You know what? That's
what
you got the Jeff cinematic universe. You got it going on.
I'm really good at looping films together in cinematic universes, and
he's in New York. That's what it says on Wikipedia. So I'm guessing it's Buffalo. York. Yeah,
I thought they were in California, but maybe I'm just crazy and just not paying attention to things the way I should be. So they leave the circus, they leave the carny circus, and they move on to bigger sites, and they turn their act.
Go on. I want that one moment I forgot. They're leaving. Stanton and Molly are leaving. They're packed up. The circus is leaving town. Zena's sitting on the stairs by herself. This is after her husband has died, and he comes back up to her. Stanton comes back up to her and hands her the notebook and says, do you want the notebook back at least, basically? And she's like, no. Like, what's the point? Like, he's dead. You already know everything. So I know everything.
He seals his fate. And here's the thing too. You have to remember, like this stuff, and we should have just said this earlier, but super quick. This is not stuff you learn in college. You don't take a course for this. This is back in the day when you wanted to learn a trade, you apprenticed under someone and learned the trade from them. And then it was passed on like master and apprentice, like Jedi style, like Sith style, whatever. And so it's like, he learned this act from this dude, and he's the only one who knows it. Like he is now the keeper of the knowledge. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's
absolutely. It's all handed down,
Right. Yeah.
But that another scene, like, God, this movie's so fucking good. There's a scene when I keep forgetting David Strathairn's character, Pete, when his character is still alive, Bradley Cooper's Stanton goes, I was thinking maybe you could teach me some things.
Yeah, he's stoked about it.
And Pete goes, teach you some things. And at first Stanton's like, oh shit, I overstepped my bounds, like I shouldn't have said that. And he's like, yeah, like I hope that's okay. And he's like, no, it's fine. Nobody has ever asked me to do that in such a long time.
Right.
He was caught off guard. He's like, yeah, he doesn't say yes, but that's what I like about this movie. He doesn't say yes. He's like, no, it's fine. Nobody's just asked me that in a long time. And then Stanton smiles and he knows that he's in. Right. So this movie is so fucking good. Like every scene in this movie is deliciously constructed.
It's, you know what it is? It's just like a good, like, again, as we were talking the other day about Quentin Tarantino films, and we were talking about how later Quentin Tarantino films as a whole can be sloppy or uneven or patchwork. But the scenes are like fine pieces of steak that you just eat. And this film is just a giant steak. Like scene after scene is just a glory, just delicious. And so we segue now into the big city, and they've refined their mentalist act, and they're doing it in like restaurant club type situations. that you'd see in the early 40s, late 30s, and they live. I think they live in like the hotel above the club that they work at or something, maybe something like that. Like a room and board. I mean, like back in the day, like if you wanted to be entertained, you'd go hang out at a club. That's, Coco Cabana or whatever. That sort of thing.
Like a supper club. Adults would go after dinner. You would go to supper at a nightclub, like a supper club, basically, and you drink and have hors d'oeuvres or whatever.
Yep.
That was the old school nightlife style,
Right.
Kind of a lost art.
Scene. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
And another great scene is when we cut to New York and he's doing his show and he's got this affected old-timey transatlantic accent that he's using instead of his usual like Midwestern Southern accent.
I did not pick up on that. You're absolutely right.
And he's kind of talking like this, and
he's changed. He's trying to adjust. He's conforming.
Now he's in the big city now.
Backgrounds. Right.
He's got to fool the big city people now. So this is
the hoi polloi, as they would call them.
Exactly. This is a bigger game. So you have to up your game. You have to change your accent. You got to dress in a tuxedo. Right. You have to. And
they're making good money. They're making
great money. She's not happy though. She's not happy because he's a dickhead, and she has realized that he's a dickhead, and he always will be a dickhead, and he just wants and wants and wants and takes and takes and takes, and
they keep going over the act too. Like it's like it's a never ending refinement of this act. Like they just keep. Yeah. They've been doing it for 2 years, and they're still going over the act.
And he says she's still messing it up. It's because her heart's not into it. She's such a sweetheart. You just kind of want to hold her and go, they're there, but like,
get out of here.
She doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't like. She's such a nice girl, and he treats her like garbage. And this is where Cate Blanchett shows up in a fucking fantastic scene where he's doing his act, and we're getting used to him doing his big high time act. Right. And she's his assistant, Rooney Mara, and so they do their whole mentalist shtick, and they get to the end. And Cate Blanchett stands up and is like, I kind of call bullshit, She disrupts
everything. She's disrupting everything.
You're full of it. And he turns it around on her. You think, oh, okay. Is she in on it? Are they all in on it? And they're just doing like, this is their finale. You could be thinking that too. But no, she's actually trying to call him out on his bullshit. And he turns it back around on her and guesses that she has a handgun in her purse. She's like, what am I holding in my purse?
Which is also a setup. It's also a Chekhov's gun.
Absolutely. It's a Chekhov's gun. It's an actual Chekhov's gun. What I'm going to go into this because I've been thinking about this. I love the relationship between Cate Blanchett and Bradley Cooper's characters is so fucking good. You might actually miss how good it is. Every scene, like once he meets her, he thinks that he's got the edge on her. Like he thinks that.
Wait, hold on. Listen, I don't want to interrupt you. Do you finish that thought? I have to hold on. Before you get there, I just want to touch back on one tiny little detail. I'm so sorry. I apologize.
Oh no, go ahead. Yeah, this is what it's for.
To elaborate a little bit further on how this works. So when Pete tells Stan, he goes, look, here's the deal. If it's an older woman, then that means it's very likely that they have a son that they are estranged from. And if it's a younger person, then that means that it's usually mom, or like it's almost like a logical pseudoscience. That's what it is. It's a pseudoscience. It's like a lot, like the way, you feel someone's scalp to determine their aches and pains or whatever. Like it is not based on science, but it's based on probability and reading something.
Logic and probability. It's a weird pseudo form of logic and probability. Exactly, right. Jeff. That's perfect.
Right. And so what Nate is just describing, and I'm going to let him get back to in a minute. I don't want to take away his thunder, but what happens in this moment is that she breaks the chain of custody, because in order for the act to work, they need to only be handling and interacting with each other, assistant and mentalist. And she breaks that, and by not giving over the object, and he removes his blindfold. And then what happens, Nate?
So he removes his blindfold, and she thinks that he's got her. This is the only scene in the movie. If you've seen this movie, this is the only scene in the movie where she actually gets had very briefly, and it comes back to bite him in the fucking ass.
It bothers her. She is so upset that this happens.
So she goes, all right, what's in my clutch? What's in my purse? And she holds it up, and he takes his mask off, and you think he's fucked. He's like, there's no way he's going to know. And he guesses it's a nickel-plated, revolver, a little pop gun. And he's right. And like the crowd is like, woo, and later on we find out, it's more guesswork. It's more logic. It's more probability. She's like, how did you know?
She's enamored too. She is she's angry and she's enamored all at the same time. She's so attracted to him.
And enamored. But at the same time, what I wanted to say is that when you see the scenes between her and him, he's falling all over himself to dress her down at every fucking opportunity. He's attracted to her, but he's also so fucking insulting and dismissive of her at the same time. Yeah. Anytime he opens his mouth at her, it's a condescending, or it's a rebuff, or it's a whatever. But then he's also, you want to fuck me, right? You want me. And the whole time she just grits her teeth and is just like, I'm going to get this fucker back. Like, I'm going to get him. She lets him think that he's in control every time he shows up at her office.
She ends up pulling the long con on him.
She ends up pulling the long con on him, playing the mother role as a psychiatrist to her, actually gets him to lie down in the shrink chair. Yeah. And one of the few moments of vulnerability for Stanton is when she head shrinks him and he's lying down. And she's like, that's the moment where she's like, I have him. I got him.
Well, even before that. And here's the thing, the movie, you really can split the movie into two parts. There's the carny section, and then there is the beginning of this relationship and the big con. Yes. And the big con happened. Well, the con that we are following turns out to be its own con in and of itself. Ultimately, we are just as much the rubes.
So the whole setup for this is that there's a judge that she knows, that she ended up going to the show with, that is friends of her father who died or whatever. Right. It's a very, very influential judge. Him and his wife, played by Mary Steenburgen, had a son who was in World War I, and he was killed in Europe when the Americans were in World War I. He wanted him to enlist. She didn't want him to enlist. So her entire life revolves around her grief for her son. That's it. That's all she exists for, is to grieve her son. And he is invited by the judge. This is where it gets really fucked for him. He is invited by the judge to come to his house for a private reading.
To do a spook show.
To do a spook show.
Right.
Rooney Mara is like, no, don't do that. Like, everyone is like, don't do the spook show. They know you can't get that personal. And he's like, all he sees is dollar signs. He thinks he's amazing. His shit doesn't stink. He sees that he can make a ton of money off this judge and his wife. And he goes and does the show. He goes and does the reading. And you think, okay, well, that went well. Like, he actually communes and is just like, oh, we'll be reunited in the afterlife. Don't worry about this life. Just live your life, and when the time comes, we'll all be reunited. It's okay. So on one level, you think, okay, what's the harm in that? What's in the harm of parapsychology and ghost hunters if they're telling someone's loved ones that has died, it's okay.
Yeah, we're providing comfort. Yeah,
you think in one way you're providing comfort, but this scene comes back around later in the movie in a really fucking dark way.
So shocking. I was not expecting it.
I'm laughing because it's so shocking. It's not because it's a funny scene. It's just like, holy shit. Like, we'll get there in a minute because it sets up the rest of this. There's a huge downward spiral that's on the same level as Requiem for a Dream. And
we have to touch on one other thing too before we even get there, but finish your thought and then I'll say it. Go ahead.
So he does the spook show with the judge. This is the beginning. I mean, there's several scenes that set up the beginning and the end. This is really the point. The point of no return is about to come, but this is kind of the inciting incident of the point of no return. So he's done the spook show. He's done a spook show. He can't get enough of it. He wants more money. He goes to Cate Blanchett and says, look, you're a psychiatrist. You're connected with people in this city.
Right.
I want the dirt on all these people so I can do spook shows for them and make a ton of money. She doesn't even give a shit about the money, or she's pretending that she doesn't care about the money. He said, I'll split it with you 50-50. And
talk about the safe. The safe is important.
She has a safe in her office. He says, I will stash all the money in your safe. And if you change your mind and you want half of it, it's yours. If not, I'll take it all.
An illusion of trust.
It's an illusion of trust. It's a con man scheme. It's absolutely a con man scheme. But she's conning him too by going, I don't really want any of the money. But she's keeping it in her safe. So you're like, you fucking idiot. Like, what you know? She is.
I want to jump in here real quick. Sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought. Finish your thought.
She is literally like a lioness, and she's got her jaws wide open, and his head is in her mouth, and he's like, so, you know, you should probably listen to everything I say and do because I'm fucking amazing. While he's got a lioness's jaws around his head, he doesn't even fucking realize it. Cate Blanchett is terrifying in this movie in so many different ways. She is my favorite actress on the planet right now, and she has been for a long time.
She's great, and she's great in Don't Look Up, which is its own insane. Did you see it?
Yes, I watched it. It was funny. I felt
it killed me, dude. It like actually killed me. Like I was having a panic attack when I was watching it.
I felt it wasn't as funny as it should have been because of everything that's happened recently, and
the satire is cutting. It's cutting satire. It's so sharp.
It's more just this is accurate, basically. Just like this is accurate. Yeah. This is absolutely accurate. But yeah, I liked it.
So real quick, just to touch on a couple of small details that are incredibly important as Nathan is weaving. There's so much stuff to remember, and I'm so afraid that we're going to forget some crucial element that's so like delicious to pour over. So one element of technology that's very like integral to the story. I remember watching the 47 film and thinking, wow, that was something back then. In the 47 film, there was an element of technology that was really like it was a fulcrum of the plot was the dictaphone. She has a dictaphone in her office. She's capable. The therapist is capable of recording her therapy conversations. And she keeps records of she has recordings of all of these conversations, aka the dirt that Nathan is referring to. And so Nathan, and he plays right into her hands. He's so desperately wants this information. And the fact that it's on a recording allows her to be reluctant in order to further the con, knowing full well that he can still get the information that he needs to continue his con without her having to give it to him because it's on the recording. And so this becomes like a whole little subplot, like a teeny little subplot of like, he's got to get the recordings out of the office in order to find out what he needs to know for his next mark. That's very important. The other thing I wanted to say, and this is super important, is she, as Nathan said, she starts to take him apart, or tries to. She's trying to take him apart, and he's trying to keep a wall up, and you know, she's slowly wearing him down, and she is a lioness. He doesn't realize that she's like a cat toying with her food before she's going to eat it. You know what I mean? He just doesn't even understand the danger that he's in. And she's all just in the way that she was very like, she took it personal. It got under her skin when he was able to accurately predict her relationship with her mother or something in his pseudoscience breakdown. His 2-bit psychology versus her master's psychology.
Yes. He did it in a way though that was condescending to try to dig it
very
in her.
Condescending. Yes.
To dig it at the dagger in her side to go, fuck you. I know what I'm doing. Instead of doing it in a nicer way and being like, hey, you know, that's what sealed his fate with her, is that he was being a dick about it the entire time after she challenged him.
You might be right. And what happens is this is huge. She offers him a drink and he says, I never drink.
Mm-hmm. He says that to everybody who offers him a drink because
right. I wasn't picking up on that. I didn't even notice it earlier in the film. Now I want to go back and rewatch, but he is very prideful in declining liquor and that he has never touched the stuff. And she pulls at that like a thread. And it's like, you know what it is? It is the thread on the sleeve of a sweater, of a knitted sweater.
Absolutely.
And she just pulls on it and pulls on it and pulls on, finds his weakness.
He thinks he's being superior by saying that. I don't touch the stuff. I'm not weak enough to drink like my dad did or whatever. Instead of just going, if he was smarter, he would have said,
no thanks.
No thanks. No thanks. Or he'd take the drink and just put it aside or whatever.
She says that too. She says, you
absolutely.
could have you didn't have to tell me that you never touch the stuff or that you don't drink. You could have just taken the drink and just put it on the table. I wouldn't have even thought about it, but you made such a big deal about it.
Yep.
And that's when we learned that his father was a drunk and that he hated his father. We slowly learned that he hated his father. That's why he let his father die. Lets his father die in the cruelest way you could let your father die.
He lets his father freeze. He takes all the blankets off his dad and opens the windows during
the winter time. He puts them on himself. He puts them on himself
and watches his dad die, and then buries him in the house and sets it on fire. Like, it's super fucked up. Like,
so basically, what he's doing is he's taking not only his former life. It's symbolic of his life. His father's house, like, you know, when we think of like your coat of arms, like your house of Stark, house of Baratheon, house of Targaryen. He burns down his house. He kills his father and sets out to make his own sort of thing. And what happens is there's a reason why he doesn't drink, because the drink is a weakness for him. It is his, what's it called?
Achilles heel.
It's his Achilles heel. And,
he's directing attention towards his Achilles heel by saying that.
Right.
Because he hubris. He might as well have a shirt that says, "I am hubris."
That's what it is.
He walks around thinking that he's the smartest person in the room, and everybody is reading him. Like, she is just reading him like a book.
He is more hubris than Phil Hartman in Jingle All the Way.
Yes, absolutely. Way to bring it back around. Jingle All the Alley. Nightmare Jingle Alley.
Nightmare Jingle Alley. But yeah, he's so, and she sees that. And as he does more cons, and, you know, Molly wants to leave, or she does leave, or she's slowly getting to leave. We're closing in on the end here. Molly wants to leave. And she eventually, you know, they start sleeping together. Him and Cate Blanchett start sleeping together, and he does the first con successfully. And here's the other thing that I want to compare to the alcoholism that is dormant in his body, in his blood. The alcoholism is dormant. That's what they say. It lies dormant. That's why abstinence is important in the realm of sobriety. If you remain abstinent, then the poison can't poison you, and you can't become, your walls won't come down. You won't lose your power as long as you don't take a drink. And that's the Achilles heel. But the addiction, the alcoholism, manifests itself in money. He's addicted to making money. That's his alcoholism. So he chases the dollar instead of chasing the drink. And when he gets that money from the spook show with the judge, he is intoxicated, and it's so intoxicating that he begins to drink. And once he lets the drink in, he seals his doom.
He takes a drink right in front of Cate Blanchett, like almost defiantly.
Right.
He takes a drink because he thinks,
to show that he's strong. He wants her to see that he's strong.
Exactly. He thinks that he's got her and he has nothing to worry about. And he's kind of letting his guard down a little bit with this woman. And what I just realized, I don't know, maybe this is a crazy theory. I feel like the relationship between Stanton and what's Cate Blanchett's character's name? I want to refer to her properly. Lilith. Her name's Lilith.
Dr. Lilith. Perfect name, right?
So the relationship between Lilith and Stanton, it's almost like they're using opposite gender roles against each other, because
profound.
They usually, like, Lilith, I mean, the psychiatrist is usually, you know, not especially not today, but back then it was a man, very analytical, very pragmatic, very just straight down the line, clinical.
Freud.
And women, you know, kind of have that, or known for that, having an intuition and being empathetic towards, and being able to pick up on cues and signals of people, you know, and they're but they're using it against each other in a warped way, and kind of in reverse. So I thought that was pretty clever on that too. That probably goes back to the novel, not just the movies too. I thought that was pretty clever, and I like that kind of interplay. So from there, and you said he becomes intoxicated, and this is where we really get into the dire straits of things, because he's like, I want more. And she goes, a guy named Ezra Grindle has requested your services. And he's like, great. He's like,
she introduces it. She's the one.
She introduces it.
Yes. No. Forget it. Actually.
She's conning him.
Because
she knows this guy's bad news. This guy is an industrialist, millionaire, gangster. I mean, he's just bad business.
Who's the paper man that buried Orson Welles because he made Citizen Kane? Hearst.
William Randolph Hearst. Yeah.
He is like an even eviler version of Hearst. He's like this evil man that is worth more money than God.
And I love that Richard Jenkins plays him, because you think of Richard Jenkins and you think, oh, he's, everybody's uncle, he's just
so good,
sweet guy, but he comes across as very mild on the surface, but underneath there's this darkness, and it shows, sometimes. And
terrifying.
Like, this guy is fucking evil, like really bad. And she even goes, she's the one who offers it to him, just, but she even goes, you might want to steer clear of this one. He's bad news.
She's Machiavellian.
She's fucking with him. Absolutely. I just had deja vu. I feel like I've had this conversation before. That was weird. Maybe we've had this conversation in another dimension.
You're in the Matrix.
We're in the Matrix. So she's like, I don't know. You probably shouldn't go see this guy. It's probably bad news. And he's like, no, just
now he's white on rice. As soon as she says that, because that's the carny. That is the carny challenging him. Like, you're telling me I shouldn't do this. I'm definitely gonna do it. She hears him. That's when she goes to the bathroom to wash up. She leaves him open. She leaves him by himself because she knows he's gonna try and break in. Get a copy of the recording. But what she's doing with the judge is she's showing him how she wants him to do it with Ezra Grindle.
Yeah.
So that's a warm up. That's the beginning of the con. Is she's like, here's my recordings. I want you to take note on the recordings of the dirt. So she basically lays out everything that he needs in order to do the Grindle thing. But when she introduces Grindle, that's when, as you said, she rescinds her offer, becomes reluctant, and she knows he's gonna do it anyway.
Yep.
Now
she's got him.
When do we first start to realize that Grindle is serious business? What happens?
He makes Stanton take a polygraph test, and apparently, Grindle has a very sordid past. He had a wife, a lover, that died early in childbirth. He has been feeling guilty about that ever since. So he has been apparently he has
correction, not a wife. That was a teenage mistress.
A teenage mistress. Okay.
Something like that. It was not that was not his wife. That was a girl who
she ran off
into. Yeah.
Yes, she ran off with him and pressured into miscarrying, and she died during the miscarriage. And he's been feeling guilty about that particular girl for a while now, and he's an old man now, and
eating him away at side, just killing him.
Has been consulting quote unquote psychics and mediums to try to commune with her, to say he's sorry or to get closure or whatever. And he just finds out that they're all fake. Like he's, kind of a James Randi, kind of just finding out that they're all fake charlatans. So he hears about this guy doing a spook show for the judge and thinking, oh, well, he's communing with, I got to find out if this guy is real. So he invites him to his office building or whatever, and he makes Stanton take a polygraph test.
And that's when we see Holtz
McCallany from Mindhunter.
Anderson.
Yeah,
he's in a lot of stuff. He's in a ton of stuff, and he's great.
Yes,
he's kind of like a button man enforcer. He's a fixer. He's
100% skeptical of Stanton. He can his bullshit detector buries the needle as soon as he meets Stanton. He knows.
Yeah, he knows. He has his own. He's able to read people, but from like a mobster or like a fixer perspective.
Yeah, he just
So-
knows that this guy is full of shit. And when the polygraph starts, he is full of shit. You see it
Totally.
go boop, 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 boop. Like,
And it's a great moment. GDT just like
Yes.
fucks with us so hard.
Can you
'Cause
commune
we're
with
like,
the
what's gonna
dead?
happen?
And it goes, the needle goes crazy. You're like, oh shit, he's fucked. And then he calms himself because he knows after 2 questions he's fucking this up. So he calms himself, he centers himself, he concentrates on what he's learned, and then he goes into mentalist mode in the fucking polygraph.
I read that scene a little bit differently. And again, maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I thought that he was getting panicked. And in an act of desperation, he starts to reveal his secret weapon, which is the information that he has
that's
gleaned.
part of it.
And
Yes.
that's because he knows that is true.
He knows
that's
it's a
what
fact.
bogs
You're
him
right.
down.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So he calms down. That calms him down, and they see that he knows things that nobody else could know.
Yeah, and it scares the shit out of Grindel. And
Right.
he's like, well, how the fuck did he know that? Like, what the fuck? So he thinks that,
Right.
oh, he thinks
This
this
the
guy
poly tester is broken, maybe even.
yeah, he thinks this guy could be the real deal. So he
Right.
goes forward. He's like, $10,000 a session. I'll, until we get closure. $10,000 a session in 1941. That's a fuck ton of money. That's probably what,
Keep
75
talking. I'm gonna do the thing. I'll do the math right now. Keep going. I'm going on Google. Keep
That
telling something.
is an absolute ton of money. And when we meet Grindel, you know right away that this guy's gonna kill him if he fucks up. And the whole time you're like, don't do it, don't do the spook show. He tells Molly what's going on, and he's saying, just stick with me for this, and then when this is done, we'll just go somewhere else. And
real quick, the inflation of $10,000 in 1941 is $189,000.
That's insane. And he has at least
session.
three sessions or so with this guy
Right.
in the movie. So he's making $500,000-$600,000, just insane.
Yeah, something like that.
Made
over $500,000.
Yeah,
more money than he ever needs for the rest of his life.
Absolutely.
Life-changing money, but it's still not enough.
It's still not enough for him because it's all about the show too, and it's
Right.
It's the skill of being able to carny it up on somebody.
Well, here's the thing. He asked for and this is again why you don't do the spook show, because now here he is involved with an incredibly dangerous man, and the stakes get amped up even further when we see Cate Blanchett. And it's never, as you said, GDT, he does not hold our hand. We never understand exactly what happened. It's all implied. Cate Blanchett, Dr. Lilith, shows us that she has been gutted like a fish in the past. Like, she has this long scar running across, long ways in her body, as if she had been autopsied, like that kind of scar.
Yes.
And someone hurt her really bad.
She's been tortured, or she's been punished for something.
Right. And so learn.
Is it Grindel? Who the fuck knows who it is?
It's heavily implied that it could be Grindel. And Grindel begins, so we see how dangerous this informs us how dangerous he is. And then Grindel starts asking for the impossible. He wants to actually see her. I want to see her. I want to talk to her. I just want to see her. And the hubris, the mental, the cloudy mental gymnastics that Bradley Cooper, that Stan has to do in his head, to think that maybe I could just show her and that he'll be satisfied.
No,
he is not. And so, as you said, it's right. It becomes a challenge. He wants, not only does he want the money, but he needs to prove to himself. He needs to prove to Dr. Lilith. He needs to show everybody. He needs to show Molly. He has to show everybody that he can do this final caper for all the marbles.
Even though Molly is done with him at this point.
She's done. She's out the door.
Completely checked out. And I like the fact that they did not kill Molly off in this movie or anything like that. Where, like,
me too.
At the pivotal scene where she's killed, she's fridged basically, or whatever. She's probably the smartest character in this movie after she ends up with Bradley Cooper, because she realizes all of this is just all bullshit. There's a nice there's a nice scene where she calls up the circus, her circus friends, and they're like, hey, you know, I'm just checking on you. I miss you guys. And then Stanton comes home to their apartment in a hotel or whatever. And Ron Perlman, the little guy, and Toni Collette are there. And they're having a bit of a room party. They're just visiting with Molly.
Just reminiscing, yeah, with Molly.
And they know that this guy is bad news, even though, because there's a scene where they find out that he's sweet on her at the circus, and Ron Perlman like beats the shit out of him, and Rooney Mara's like, stop, I love him.
Very, very protective of her because of the connection with the father.
And they kind of stop because they realize it's her choice. So they're like, all right, whatever. They're in love. But you can tell there's a trepidation. There's a bit of an awkwardness in the room when he comes home because they know that he's probably doing the spook show. He's probably doing something he's not supposed to be doing. And it's kind of a sad scene because you know, they've been split up. A family has been split up. And even later,
the last time that they're all going to be together.
It's the last time they're all going to be together. And Toni Collette knows that he's up to no good. She knows better than anyone else.
She does his tarot.
Absolutely.
And she says, you know, it's funny. She does the tarot and we get the final warning. Don't do the spook show based on what the cards say. And he ignores it, which brings us to Molly. Molly is leaving. She's ready to go. There's a whole thing. We don't have to go into this, but there's a whole thing. Basically, he figures out the perfect way to do the illusion of the ghost, to show the ghost of the girl in one of these giant courtyards. So he goes to Molly, says, Molly, I need you to do this one last thing, please. Just help me and we'll be gone, or help me and then you could go. One of those two things. And she says something so profound, and this ties back to electricity. She says, look, when I was doing that electricity stuff, I would know when I've had too much.
Exactly.
And this is where we learn. Right. And she says, that's exactly what this feels like right now. It basically saying, I feel like I'm being electrocuted just being in your presence. Like,
I've had enough. Yeah.
I've had enough. She's saying it's a very powerful moment because it informs the earlier scene, and B, it just really drives the point home of what Stan has become and how she realizes that she deserves better than this. It's her moment of integrity for her character, and she leaves.
She was all in on him in the beginning. She thought he was charming and that they're young lovers and that they're gonna have a great life together. She was all in on it. She wanted to have a happy life with Stanton. Stanton had other designs. He had delusions of grandeur. He wanted more. He wanted more. He wanted more. He needed an accomplice, a prop of a person to use to get to where he needed to go. It was inconsequential who it was. It just happened to be Molly.
She figures out that he's banging Dr. Lilith because of the sketchbook.
There's a sketch. He has a sketchbook. He sketched Molly. That's probably one of the reasons why she was into him in the beginning. And, you know, he sketched Cate Blanchett, which was a mistake. And
as you said,
it shows that he has let his guard down, is actually kind of in love with this woman, or at least infatuated with her, and has let his guard down. And she is doing the opposite and is just fucking this guy over left and right. And
as you said too, that he's one of those types of guys that wants to be with everybody, or has like a game for everybody. Like he's interested and they chews you up and spits you out. And she realizes that she's just a page in his journal, and that Dr. Lilith is the new page in the journal. So that's what causes her to leave in the first place. He convinces her to stay. We come to the night of the final night, the big take, that when they're supposed to do the thing. He has this all planned out. And right when she appears as the ghost, I don't know if we mentioned this. Long story short, she's supposed to appear as the ghost of
the same dress that she was wearing when she died, because they have pictures of her. They have pictures of Dory, I think, when she was dead. I guess a sketch of when, or a photo of when, in her funeral dress
from 1908
or whatever. Yeah. So there's blood in her crotch. There's blood on her hands, and she's in this white dress, and she's supposed to just appear in the courtyard. It's dark. It's snowy. and she's just supposed to appear, and they think that he's
and
going
you're
to try.
vulnerable. Grindel is vulnerable. His
You're vulnerable.
mind is so intoxicated in his own way that his mind is going to sort of glaze over anything that doesn't seem right because he so desperately wants the truth to be real.
He's gotten to the point. Excuse me. Oh, it's past my bedtime. He's gotten to the point that he has he's allowing anything else to happen to be whatever because he feels that Stanton has passed his bullshit test. So now he just wants to believe whatever happens.
He's like, I'm just going to pay you money. They start hanging out. He believes in him, and he's going, look, I want to see her, and that's when he gets really pushy. And so Stan's like, all right, I'll give the guy what he wants. So they do the thing. They go through the whole rigmarole, right? And just as they're getting to the point where she's going to reveal herself as an apparition to Grindel, Anderson, the fixer, he's inside. He hears about the suicide. Oop, shouldn't have said that word on YouTube. She hears about the murder and death of the judge and Mrs. Kimball and Judge Kimball. And what happens is that triggers him. Oh, something's not right. So he runs back out because Grindel says, hey, Anderson, go take a load off while we do this thing. He's like, are you sure, boss? Are you sure, boss? I don't know about this guy. He's like, no, it's fine.
Yep.
And this is when Grindel also confesses the wrong thing to Stan. It's so
awful and it's
oogie. Really bad. It's really bad.
So like let's just mention real quick that Stan is so into himself and has so much hubris at this point that he doesn't think he's like, I'm going to get Grindel to get down on his knees and pray or whatever, ask for absolution. Never once does it occur to him that if you see the ghost of your loved one, you would actually try to run up to and embrace him. Because that's what you do when you see a loved one you haven't seen in a while. You want to embrace them, whether they're a ghost or not. So the fact that he either didn't account for this or didn't think it was going to happen is part of him being so intoxicated with like being a high on himself, being a mark for himself, basically. And that's where it all goes wrong, is because Grindel sees her and is just so overcome with emotion that he does not get down on his knees and pray or whatever. He races toward her and grabs her.
And he's like, what the fuck?
You're not Dory. What is this? And sees the fake blood and sees that it's not her really up close.
And he hits her. And
he was like, I'm going to kill all of you. I'm going to fucking kill you. But to get back to the thing, right before she shows up.
Thank you.
He confesses to Stanton that he is a serial killer, basically. He has abused and killed and raped women, multiple women.
He's a bad dude who's done some bad things.
Awful person who has just done terrible things to young girls.
And then all of a sudden, we then connect back to the giant scar we see on Dr. Lilith. And though it's never told to us, you put two and two together. Even more so, the giant scar does suggest something rather unpleasant. Do you know where I'm going?
Well, let's talk about Enoch, because we haven't even mentioned Enoch, and I think this kind of ties around. Remember the fetus in the jar with the eye that's been implanted? Yeah,
I was trying to figure out why there was so much emphasis on Enoch, and I could not put that together. Please, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Because when you go to a freak show or you go to a sideshow, they'll have things that really aren't. There's this big fat baby fetus in a jar. It's very off-putting to see, but it's clear someone has clearly cut up its forehead and implanted a big eyeball right in the middle of its forehead, because you can see the stitching and the scarring right there. So it's clearly put in after the baby has died to make it look like the baby was born with a third eye.
I was wondering what the scene was, and I thought that was a BS story. That wasn't a true story.
Yeah, it's like relics back in the day when they would say, "Oh, this relic is holds the blood of Peter, Saint Peter or whatever." It's all bullshit, It's just to bring in the rubes, because there was one time when I lived in Arizona, there was they would have all kinds of weird sideshow freak shows out in the desert, and there was one called "See the Thing." you know, 10, 50 miles away, 10 miles away. Fuck, go
Yeah.
see what is
Right.
what is the thing? And I lived there for so long. I was like, we're going
That's
to
a
go
good
see the
short
thing.
story. That's a good short film.
So we go there, and it's got a bunch of other stuff. It's like a museum and shit and
Right.
gift shop. But you actually go to see the thing, and you don't even know what the fuck it is. It's a shriveled up. They want you to think it's like a chupacabra or something, but it's just a shriveled up animal, and it's so unimpressive. And it's just like, well, this could be anything. It's just carcass, you know, like it just looks weird. So you're like, maybe this is a thing or a monster.
Before Rotten.com. Before
Yeah.
Rotten.com, that's what you would do. You'd go to a freak show.
Absolutely.
That's how you
Yes.
saw messed up stuff, you know?
So it's all fabricated. And Willem Dafoe kind of introduces Enoch, you know, this baby tore itself out of its mother and killed the mother.
Right.
And, you know, the eye follows you around wherever you go like a painting. And it kind of goes back to like the death of, I don't know, the death of a parent. That definitely ties into it, where it's like, it's this albatross, like a child, a creation is an albatross, basically, of you know, young people. Youth is they're kind of like a burden to old people, because I think older people feel threatened by younger people, especially in this society where we hold so much value over young people, as opposed to, like, especially like in Japan, the elderly are more prized than the youth.
Oh yeah, they're venerated and taken care of. Yeah,
you know, here, once you turn 40, you're a fucking fossil. You're senile. Like, young people rule this country, and it's, you know, there's nothing wrong with young people, but it's a little disconcerting to, you know, people think that when you get to a certain age, you're just completely useless, and it's weird. And I think that kind of all ties into it a little bit.
Question: is the geek an Enoch?
Yeah. I think so.
Interesting.
Because we get to the whole thing where, because I want to talk about the end. The end is my favorite.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, that is like, oh God, yeah.
So we hear about the murder suicide. His assistant Holt McCallany runs out, and this is after Grindel finds out that Rooney Mara is not the ghost, and he's like, he turns to Stan. He's like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. I'm gonna destroy you.
Right.
And I don't know what. Oh yeah,
Stan caves in Grindel's nose. I mean, he just beats him to a pulp, and
Stan
just
realizes
he's
fucked, so he's got to kill this guy. So he beats the shit out of Richard Jenkins.
Mean, not like that's such an understatement for what he does.
He caves his face
in his face, like
his nose is gone, it's dented in, and
he dies.
Like, what are you doing? Like, you're a crazy man. And so they're like, get in the car. So they go to the car, and Holt McCallany comes out, starts shooting at him. He backs up, hits him, and then runs over him again in another brutal gore scene where he just takes his head off, basically, as he drives over him.
The violence is so visceral.
The violence in this movie is not a ton of it, but when it happens, it is so shocking and brutal.
Which I prefer in a weird, like, listen, every type of violence has its place. And that's not to say one type of violence is better than another, but there is something so elevated, I should say, to just not always giving it to us, but when you do, you give it good. That's what this movie does.
And Del Toro gives it good. He is not fucking around with this violence in this movie. It's a lot like Pan's Labyrinth. The violence in Pan's Labyrinth, centered around the captain and what he's doing to his victims and everything. It's just brutal.
You're so right.
You know, so they get away. They kill both those guys. They get away. She leaves. She's like,
he starts smashing up the car.
Yeah,
like, oh, this is just part of the plan. Yeah, let's just smash up the car and blah blah blah. Yeah, she's like, I'm done with you. I'm out of here. Leaving. I don't want any part of this anymore. I'm gone.
So she's gone. He's left alone. He goes back.
Gone from the film. That's her. That's where she leaves.
It. She's done. She leaves. Good. She gets out. She's done.
Bye.
She's hopefully goes on to have a happy life. And
that's what we hope for her.
He has so his job as a mentalist is pretty much done. His wife, I don't know if they're married. His girlfriend.
You're forgetting one thing.
Has left them. What's that?
Never mind. I'm wrong. Keep going. It happens after. Sorry.
So he hasn't hit rock bottom yet, but he's getting there. He's already drinking at this point.
She writes him a letter. She writes a letter saying, I'm gone. She writes a letter.
Yeah, I'm gone. So he walks back to
that happened earlier actually, but
the cops are after him, so he walks he gets back. He makes it back to Lilith's office.
Right.
And this is the scene where she lets him have it.
Just
verbally, everything that she has wanted to say to this guy.
Yes.
You're just a fucking okie. You are nobody. You think you're the smartest person in the room. You are an idiot. You know, you have nothing going on. Everybody knows you're a moron, basically, just paraphrasing. And he is just he's like, she gives him the money and it's a bunch of ones on the top and it's a bunch of ones.
She's rolled it up in a way. Yeah.
She's taking the rest of the money. She fucked him over. So she is taking him hook and line and sinker. And he's like, you know, she pulls out the gun, shoots him, gets him in the ear. You know, he charges her and starts strangling her with a telephone cord. She's called the cops.
Yeah. But wait, real quick. She basically lets him know in certain words, you were an easy mark.
You were
basically.
So easy. Exactly. Yeah. I got you.
Yeah. And then he attacks her. Right. He attacks her. And then boom, Chekhov's gun. We set up the gun. He's so dismissive of her nickel-plated pea shooter.
So it's a woman's gun. It's not a
woman's gun. It's not. And she says, she even goes, after she shoots him, she goes, I'm surprised you didn't figure out that the gun was in there by the weight of the thing. Thank you, Sardonic. Like I'm surprised that you didn't even figure out blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what he says earlier, how he figured out the gun was in the purse. He's like, the way you were holding it, you were holding it out with your elbow bent. That means there was some weight to it. And I figured, it could be a gun. And I figured, you know, women usually carry smaller guns like a Derringer or, you know, a pop gun, or something like that. A nickel-plated gun. You want protection because you're single, you're living by yourself. So it's probably, I figured out it's probably a gun, nickel-plated, because you're stylish and all that stuff. So, you know, it comes with being a con person. And when he leaves, he thinks he's got the money, and he leaves, and she goes, because he's going to leave her. Like, he's going to leave her. He's getting out of town. And she goes, but I love you, Stanton. And it was so condescending. But I really do love you. And he goes, oh shit. That's when he realizes that she has been fucking him all along.
Yep. Rolled up ones. And she shoots him in the ear. She disfigures him.
She disfigures him like she's disfigured. And there is a scene where she shows him her scar and he gets down on his knees and starts kissing it. And
as if he's fully accepting of her.
She couldn't give a fuck. She was not turned on by it at all. She was just like, I have this guy. He will do whatever I want.
You're so right. You're so
whatever
right.
I want. She was not into it at all. She was.
By the way, real quick, what is the scar? I asked this question earlier. What is the scar?
It looks like a autopsy scar.
Right. And so here's what I think. Sorry. What do you think? Go ahead. You talk.
I think that she was. I don't know if it was a pregnancy thing. Like,
I think it was.
Was it an abortion thing? What do you think?
No, I think what it was it was the same. That was his MO, and it was the same thing that happened to Dory.
See, that comes around to Enoch pregnant again. It's all connected.
Okay. She got pregnant by him. He assaulted her, maybe, or they were having a relationship. She got pregnant by him. He ripped out her womb. Sorry to be so graphic, but literally, because she was pregnant, either because he's driven to do this over and over again because of what happened with Dory, or because he just simply didn't want it for whatever reason. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know why.
It's Kronos eating his children, basically.
Yes.
He's Kronos, and he's afraid that any child will usurp him. Or take his fortune.
Takes his fortune. So he ripped her womb out, and her revenge is to use this carny guy who thinks he's so great and is going to use him to ruin. She's going to use
Grindel
to ruin Grindel because she knows his secrets. And so really her revenge is really targeted at Grindel.
two birds, one stone. I can
Right.
use I can flip this rube and I can get my revenge on this asshole.
Which is why she's hanging out at the mentalist thing in the first place. So he is
Yep.
already put himself, the moment that he started doing the mentalist act in the city and took things to the next level, he had made himself vulnerable and exposed himself to his downfall, because he would fall into a crowd of carnies. Because isn't that what it is? There's always going to be someone who's better than you. There's always going to be someone with a better con.
There's always a bigger fish, you know.
And he got taken. And
yep.
So she takes the money, she disfigures him, she fingers him for the thing, because she had been recording the sessions with him, and she has everything. She has him, but she records again and pretends to be really sad. And then the moment she turns off the recorder, she's like all laughing about it and smiling.
Yep.
Totally sociopathic. So he escapes, he gets away. He gets
shot in the ear. She starts going on and going about how he's an idiot. He gets up and attacks her and starts.
Right.
He takes the phone cord after she's called the cop, because he's on the floor.
Right.
She calls the cops and say, "There's a guy in my trying to kill me." He gets up after she gets off the phone, grabs the telephone cord and tries to strangle her with it, and she starts laughing. She starts, "You think you can take my breath away?" Like, such a fucking dig. She is unattracted to him in every way possible because she knows that he's a dickhead.
But also, she's been the target of male violence in the past from Grindel, and she's not. He can't do anything to hurt her.
I've been look at my scar.
Yeah, like my womb was ripped out.
You can't do anything to me. I have nothing. Right. I've been raped. You know, whatever. I've had my womb torn out of me. You know.
Yes. So that is done, and he runs away, and he basically turns into a hobo, and he's the type of hobo that we see. He becomes your classic hobo. The drink that has slowly attached itself to him, bit by bit, has taken hold. So now he doesn't, not only, because what was he before? He was a rich drunk man. And what happens when you take away money?
And there's
what happens when you take.
Exactly. You have nothing, you know,
then you just become a drunk man.
You just become a drunk man. And there's a scene, he's riding the rails, and then he's at a hobo camp, and they're all sitting around the fire. And even in a hobo camp, there's rules. You have to contribute something. You can't just hang out for nothing, even if you're poor. So you got to give something. So they're sitting around the fire drinking, and he gets a swig of alcohol.
2 years has passed. Some time has passed. I think it's been 2 years.
He just wants a drink, and they're like, "You need to contribute something or you're out of here." So the last thing that he has from his life in New York as a rich mentalist is his wristwatch. So he takes off his
father's wristwatch.
That's his father's wristwatch. The last vestige of his humanity is this watch.
Right.
He takes it off and gives it to them for a drink, for a fucking drink. Yep. He gets his drink, and that's it. He's full hobo now. He's a geek.
He's full hobo, and two things happen. Thing number one, he's got a hole in his shoe, and he opens up a newspaper and sees an advertisement for Toni Collette. That's number one.
Xena. Yep, she's still out there.
And he fills his shoe with it. And two, what was I going to say about being the hobo, taking the drink, the watch. Something I'm trying to remember. It was important to him becoming the hobo. Oh man, it's on the tip of my tongue, and now I can't remember what it was. It was hold on. It's right there. It's right there. It's on the tip of my tongue. I hate this. I hate it when this happens. I'm trying to think of anything that will jog my memory real quick. He wakes up. It's 2 years later. He's got a beard. He's a hobo. He takes a drink. He's got nothing now. What did I say before? Oh, that he was a man who was exposed. Oh, and this is, I think, where I can't remember. It'll come back to me.
So then he comes across a circus, not the same circus. This is a different circus that
I thought he was looking for the same circus.
He was probably looking for it to go back. And this is a different circus, but it looks a little familiar. There's a little thing here. There's a little thing here from the other circus.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the same circus. And because he says Clem isn't.
He says
Clem doesn't own the thing anymore.
He says, "I got the radio and Enoch from another circus that closed down."
Oh, you're right. Right. The circus. That's what it was. The circus had closed down.
Tim Blake Nelson is basically running.
That's
the
his
circus.
radio. That's
Yeah.
actually his radio. That's Bradley Cooper's
his radio that he got it because he sold that radio for like $5 and a hot meal to Willem Dafoe, to Clem. Yep. So he's looking for work. He's like, yeah, that was an old circuit. I got that stuff from an old circuit. Because Enoch is in the office too, just staring at him again, which is super fucking creepy. And he's back again. You know, Enoch is back in. He's watching him. You know, he's judging him. And he goes, yeah, you know, I don't really have work for you. You know,
he gives him the name. He even says, oh, yeah, so you've got Enoch. He goes, Enoch, that's a great name for this guy. Yeah. Good idea.
So, and you know, he comes in looking like he's been shit on by an elephant. He looks awful, but then he speaks very well. He goes, you know, I've fallen on some hard times recently. I apologize for my appearance, but I know stuff about being a carny. I've got things, skills and talents that I could be of service to. I'm a mentalist.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, mentalism. That's an old time vaudeville shit. You know,
yeah, that's out. We don't do mentalism anymore.
We want Jerry Springer stuff is basically what he's saying. He wants crazy shit. And he's like crestfallen because it's like he's worked his entire this past 4 years or whatever to do this, and it's worth nothing now. Absolutely nothing. And he goes, you know, please just give me a chance. And he's like, get the fuck out of here. So he's like, looks like he's about to cry. He turns around and he leaves.
Walks
and he's like,
out.
He's like, wait a minute. You know what? We do have one job that you might be good for. You could have ended the movie right there.
You could have ended the movie right there, and we all would have known, and it would have been great, and it just would have been, and we know it's coming. We know that this is coming, but like, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That's more like a P.T. Anderson move than anything else, but like,
yeah.
He goes, we got one more job for you. And he knows right away it's the geek. And he goes, yeah, we don't really have a full-time geek right now. We're looking for we're looking for one, and he knows what that means. And he's like, but we're looking for, you know, can you fill in to be a temporary geek? You know, we'll pay you, you know, and you'll have a place to sleep and all that and whatnot.
He says, I can give you a bottle. You'll have a place. Oh, now I remember what it was. Hold on. I'm going to interrupt you because I want to remember what it was. When he hops on that train, he cages himself in with chicken crates.
Yes, that's when you know what's coming.
He actually physically, visually cages himself in to hide from the police in a cage of chicken crates. My jaw hanged. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Awesome. So, the foreshadowing in this movie is so delicious. It's an art form. And
it's an art form.
If you don't know where this is headed by this time after 2.5 hours, you might be a moron. So
it's the greatest punchline. Go ahead.
He gets to the end. He's not even good enough to be a full-time geek. He's a temporary geek. They're not going to Shanghai him. They're just going to give him temporary work to be a geek. You know, he's not crazy enough to be a full-time geek. He's just a failure at everything. And he sits there and he just starts laughing. Like, it's great. He goes, well, what do you think? And it's just a close-up on Bradley Cooper's face. And he just starts crying. And he's like, Mr. I was born for it. Right. And that was it. I was born for this.
That line, I just slink back to my chair. I want to add, look, we're at the end. We were supposed to go for an hour and a half, but obviously that was impossible. And
we got through the whole movie. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, but it's like we were supposed to end 15 minutes ago, but I want to thank Nate so much for his time. We have to wrap this up. But I wanted to just add a little bit of nuance to what Nate just said, the ending, getting to the ending. And I want to thank Nate for sticking it through. I was so wrapped up in what we were discussing. I wasn't even looking at the time. I was just so caught up in what we were talking about. There's a little bit more nuance to what Nate just broke down for us. When the conversation with Willem Dafoe, Clem, in the kitchen, he literally talks about, it's almost like a Carney-esque script. Mm-hmm. First, what you do, it's a bit. It's another con.
He's probably
conning the geek.
He's told this to other people several times.
Right. So he routine. Goes, right. So Willem Dafoe explains to Stan over the steak and eggs after they've just ditched the geek. He says, first, what you do is you tell the guy that you got some temporary work, the whole thing, the whole scripted thing. And then you say, well, maybe if it works out, you could be the full-time geek, yada, yada, yada. What do you say? And what happens is at the very end, Timothy Blake Nelson says the exact same thing word for word that Willem Dafoe describes to Stan earlier in the movie. It's literally a joke. The movie is a giant joke for the punchline.
That's how you get them, though. That's how you get your geek,
right.
You know?
Except here's the thing. Even though he is somewhat gone, like Stan is just like a shell of himself, the tears well up in his eyes because he recognizes that this guy is doing what Clem said. He realizes that he has got sunk so low that he is being conned into being a geek. And instead of saying no thank you, instead of walking away, he just starts welling up with tears as he accepts his fate because he needs 2 bottles. He accepts his fate.
This is what he's good for now. Just like that
this
scene.
Is what he's good for. This is what he was born for. And he literally says, I was born for this, meaning that he finally, and this is the Oedipus Rex of it all, he finally realizes who he truly is in this world and his purpose and what he was always meant to be and what he was always meant to do, to be the geek. And instead of running away from it, because that's what happens so often in movies, so often in real life, we run away from the fear of what we are or what we could become. It's the motivation for every character in every movie. And what's so sad and bleak and just devastating about GDT's Nightmare Alley is the recognition on Bradley Cooper's face as he realizes that he has fallen right into the thing. And instead of walking out and going, man, I should clean up, I should do something, he accepts it and goes, this is who I was born to be. And in that way, he becomes the Enoch.
It comes back around to that scene we didn't even talk about where he's in Lilith's office, Dr. Lilith's office, and he goes, I know exactly who you are. And she goes, oh yeah? Well, how do you know that? And he goes, it's because you're no good. And and I'm no good either. And he knows deep down he doesn't deserve any of this. He's grasping at straws. He's just desperate to hold on to something
because he's addicted to the money, because the money is the thing that will separate him from becoming a geek.
This will keep him from being a geek. Exactly.
He's going to scale the greatest heights that he can in order to not fall down the hole. And
this might be a little too profound, but it's like a creative person who has to create, like write or do something, paint, sing. They have to do that or else they'll become a regular person. And to that,
that's perfect. No, that's perfect.
To them, that is terrifying to think about. You know what I mean?
I will tell you, I will insert myself into what Nate just said. I spent years working as a waiter as I was also trying to make movies and things and be creative. And this is absolutely like my truth is that sometimes on the darkest nights and the worst days and the worst depths and wretches of the Chinese food that I was serving to people, worked in a Chinese food restaurant. And I thought in my head when I was struggling to make my art that if I failed or if I stopped or if that I gave up, I would be nothing but a waiter. And that doing that creative endeavor was the thing that made me so much more than the job that was bringing me money. And that's why it keeps you alive. That shit is so fucking real.
Maybe this movie is a meta commentary on Guillermo del Toro's imposter syndrome as a creator.
Ooh, dude, wait.
If directors can't make films, aren't they just geeks then in their own mind? You know what I mean?
Dude, that's it. Listen, it is super late. It's way later than I told Nathan this was going to be. We said we were going to do 5 things that we were going to pick. I picked one. Nathan, you pick one. I want GDT or Peter Jackson to do Freaks. what is your pick for? Just give me one pick for.
I mean,
GDT.
I'm still holding on to Hellboy 3, even though it's probably never going to happen. But never say never. As long as Perlman is still alive and Del Toro is still alive.
Hey, Snyder Cut. We never thought we would see the Snyder Cut of Justice League. So
Selma Blair does have MS, so that might make it a problem.
It might be a little hard, but you know,
bit of a problem. But
we'll see what happens.
We can work around that.
We'll talk about Kiss another night. I promise. Minister of Darkness. Kiss was yesterday's topic. But yeah, look, I want to wrap this up. This is going to get us out of here. I want to thank Nate so much for going through the movie. That's right. Runner Style Zero. He knows it well. Jeff, we went way over time tonight from us. That's my MO, dude. I can't not do a 2-hour show.
Oh, they have to hear the 4-hour Jingle All the Way show.
We did a 4-hour
podcast.
I was about to say, I want to plug a couple of things. First of all, check out the Genreblast Film Festival. If you like genre films, you should head over to genreblast.com, or is it genreblastfilmfestival.com?
Genreblast.com.
Yeah, genreblast.com. They do it at the Alamo Draft House in Winchester. We go every year. Well, I haven't been every year, but I've been twice, and it is such a fun time. It's the meeting of the minds. People who love talking films get to see great Nate and his team. They're great programmers. So check that out. That's thing number one. Thing number two, keep your eyes peeled. Nate is also a producer. He has a writer. He's a writer as well, but he has produced with his team at Genreblast. They produced an anthology film about vacation horror called Worst Case Scenario.
Worst Laid Plans. It's based on a horror anthology book from Grindhouse Press, edited by Samantha Koyesnik. We've taken three or four stories from that and turned it into a horror anthology movie, and it's going to be pretty badass.
Right. So that is coming out. Keep your eyes peeled for that. And lastly, if you want to see Nate and I talk more, or just see Nate tackle other movies from the 90s, check out the Real 96 podcast. I mentioned it at the beginning. You can stream it on Spotify. So check that out. We'll put some links in the comments of the show. I'm not sure if I did that or not, but we'll make sure to get that in there. I want to thank Nate so much. Nate, hang on for, you know what, Nate, I'm going to say goodbye now. It's late. We'll talk, buddy. We'll talk. I'm gonna peace out. We're gonna run the Patreon ad. Peace and hair grease. That's what we say here. I'm kicking Nate off. Nate, goodbye. Bye, Nate. Boop, he's gone. Nate, thank you so much for joining us. Check out the Patreon if you have not. What is the Patreon, you might ask? Let me tell you.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jeff. So I've decided to make a Patreon. What is Patreon? I don't know how to define a Patreon. Let me look it up. Patreon is a membership platform that makes it very easy for creators to get paid for the things that they're already creating. I want to do it full-time. I want this to be my full-time job. In my efforts to make that happen, I've set up this platform. Is it going to work? Is it going to be successful? I don't know, but I would rather try and crash and burn than not try at all. The goal is to create enough passive revenue so that I can continue to do this full-time, uninterrupted. Why? Because I love to do this. I love creating content. I love making videos. I love shooting films. I love doing podcasts. In case you couldn't tell, I love to talk and I never shut the fuck up. So right now I've kept the Patreon incredibly simple. There's 2 tiers, and that may change in the future. The Murdergram is a simple way to extend support for all of the hours and hours of free content on the channel for nothing more than $1. 38 cents goes to Patreon. What's $1.38, eh? It's less than a cup of coffee, but it's a great way that you can show support for very little effort. When you divide that $1.38 by the hours and hours and hours of time spent listening to this endless drivel of content, the dollar cost average works out. Next up is the YouTube casualty for $6.66. The YouTube casualty is loaded to the gills. Enjoy the archive ad-free, as well as ad-free early access to special docu-style podcast videos, music reaction commentaries, and the like, a month before they drop on YouTube, loaded with ads, I might add. You're also going to get exclusive content and behind-the-scenes content that is not available on YouTube or anywhere else. So you get to peek behind the veil. And believe me, there's a couple of choice pieces. Most of all, more than anything, whether you join the Patreon or not, I just want to thank each and every one of you that comes to the channel, that watches all the shows, that leaves comments, that participates, that subscribes. That's really the most important thing. This is just trying to find a way to earn a living as an artist. And with that, thank you for my TED Talk. Join the Patreon because we need you!
66 cents.